God did not kill Satan or the fallen angels, and the reason will shock you. Today I am going to reveal the mystery behind the nature of God, what the future of Satan really is, and how to live free from the bondage of the devil. This video is brought to you by the Bible Memory app, which is the #1 app to use to memorize Bible verses. It has had over 1 million downloads and is available for free to everyone who hungers. Click the link in the description to start memorizing verses today. The first reason why God did not kill Satan or the fallen angels is because they are spirits and they cannot die. John chapter 4 says that God is a spirit, and since God can't die because of his spirit nature, angels were created as spirits, which means they cannot die. Angels aren't flesh and blood, they are spirit beings. And here's where it gets even deeper. The Bible clearly shows that spirits were created to live forever. You might think, wait, how do we know that? Luke chapter 20 verse 36 gives us the answer. Neither can they die anymore, for they are equal unto the angels, and are the children of God, being the children of the resurrection. This verse isn't just about good angels, it applies to all spirits, including the fallen ones. God made spirits eternal, meaning they cannot die or be destroyed. If God were to kill them, he would be going against his eternal law, and God never contradicts his word. So from the very beginning, God knew that when he created angels, including Satan and those who would eventually fall with him, they would exist forever. But here's the question you have to wrestle with. Why would God create eternal beings with the capacity for rebellion, knowing that they couldn't be killed? This wasn't a mistake. It was a deliberate choice by God. He gave them free will, and when they chose to turn against him, their destiny changed forever, but not their eternal nature. This should make us pause and reflect on how seriously God takes free will and the consequences that follow. Now, some of you might be thinking, but can't God just destroy their spirits? Isn't that a possibility? The answer is simple, no. Why? Because God is consistent with his laws, even when it comes to spirits that are now his enemies. He doesn't break his own rules. Ecclesiastes chapter 3 verse 14 tells us, I know that whatever God does, it shall be forever. Nothing can be added to it and nothing taken from it. God does it that men should fear before him. This isn't just about creation. It's about the nature of things God has set into motion. Once a spirit is created, it exists eternally, whether for good or for evil. But don't think for a second that Satan and the fallen angels have escaped judgment. Just because they cannot die doesn't mean they're free from consequences. God has reserved a place for them, the lake of fire. Revelation chapter 20 verse 10 says, And the devil, who deceived them, was thrown into the lake of burning sulfur, where the beast and the false prophet had been thrown. They will be tormented day and night forever and ever. Their existence isn't wiped out, but they will face eternal torment for their rebellion. This is the reality. Spirits cannot die, but they can be punished eternally. And that's what awaits Satan and his fallen angels. Their rebellion locked them into a future of eternal separation from God, a future of pain and torment that will never end. The second reason why God did not kill Satan or the fallen angels is to preserve free will. God doesn't want robots. He desires real, genuine love, and love cannot exist without free will. Imagine if God had instantly wiped out Satan and the fallen angels. What would that have done to the rest of the angels? They would no longer serve him out of love, but out of sheer terror. Fear would rule their hearts, not love. God didn't want that, and he certainly doesn't want that from us. Revelation chapter 12 verse 4 reveals how even some angels chose to rebel and follow Satan. His tail swept a third of the stars out of the sky and flung them to the earth. A third of the angels chose to side with Satan. God allowed it. Why? Because he values free will above all. God knew that the moment he gave his creation free will, rebellion was a possibility. But he also knew that true love requires choice. If angels or humans were forced to worship him, would that even be love? No, it would be manipulation. God's heart isn't after forced submission. He longs for those who choose him willingly, those who love him not because they have to, but because they want to. Look at the story of Adam and Eve. In the same way God gave the angels the freedom to choose, he gave humanity the same free will. He placed the tree of the knowledge of good and evil in the garden, and said in Genesis chapter 2, verse 16, "You are free to eat from any tree in the garden, but you must not eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, for when you eat from it, you will certainly die." He gave them a choice. Why? Because love without choice is meaningless. Now think about it. If God had eliminated Satan right away, wouldn't that send a message to the angels that any sign of disobedience would lead to immediate annihilation? Who would dare to disobey after that? But God didn't want their obedience to be driven by fear. Instead, he allows his creations, both angels and humans, to choose their paths, even if that means some will rebel. And the same choice extends to us today. But don't think for a second that God's patience with Satan means he approves of rebellion. Far from it. Romans chapter 2 verse 4 says, "Or do you show contempt for the riches of his kindness, forbearance, and patience, not realizing that God's kindness is intended to lead you to repentance?" His mercy is a chance to repent, not a license to rebel. The freedom to choose is sacred, but it also comes with great responsibility. So why didn't God kill Satan? Because it would have turned his entire creation into a kingdom of slaves, ruled by fear. God desires love that is chosen freely. That's why he continues to allow both angels and humans to decide for themselves whom they will serve. The third reason why God did not kill Satan or the fallen angels is to reveal his glory. God uses everything for his glory. God does not approve of evil, but he uses it to reveal his glory, which is his goodness. Satan's attacks reveal God's glory in a way we would never understand without trials. The greater the battle, the greater God's victory in the lives of his people. The struggles and temptations Satan throws our way don't just break us, they refine us. James chapter 1, verse 2-4 tells us, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything." Satan's attacks aren't just random. God uses them to strengthen us, to build a kind of faith that can only come through fire. When you endure through suffering, you're showing off the power of God. God's glory shines brightest in the darkest moments. Even the Apostle Paul had to face severe trials, and he understood this truth. When Paul prayed for God to remove his thorn in the flesh, God responded with something powerful. 2 Corinthians chapter 12 verse 9 says, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." Do you see what's happening here? God is showing his glory through our weakness. The attacks from Satan are not the end. They are the stage where God's strength and grace are displayed in ways that bring him the ultimate glory. Every time you stand firm against the enemy, God's patience, mercy, and grace are on full display for the world to see. Without Satan's opposition, we would never understand how patient God is, how merciful he is in holding back judgment, and how much grace he pours out to help us endure. Every trial you face becomes a testimony to God's goodness. Every battle with temptation becomes a showcase for his strength. So why didn't God just end Satan right away? Because God is showcasing his glory through your endurance. He's using what Satan meant for evil to bring out something beautiful, a deeper, stronger faith. God also used Satan for his sovereign plan. Have you ever stopped to ask yourself, is Satan outside of God's control? If God is sovereign, why allow him to continue wreaking havoc? The truth is, Satan's existence is not some random accident, he's part of God's greater plan. Even in all his chaos, Satan can only go as far as God allows, and his defeat is already sealed. Revelation chapter 20, verses 1-3, gives us a clear picture of this when it says, "And I saw an angel coming down out of heaven, having the key to the abyss, and holding in his hand a great chain. He seized the dragon, that ancient serpent, who is the devil, or Satan, and bound him for 1,000 years. He threw him into the abyss and locked and sealed it over him. Satan has been defeated and only has power where he is given it through believing his lies. But even when he strikes, his damage can be used for God's glory in your benefit." Romans chapter 8, verse 28 says, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose." Nothing Satan does can ever overpower God's ultimate plan for good. Every attack, every temptation, Every bit of evil is woven into a divine purpose that brings about God's glory in the end. Think about it. If Satan was destroyed immediately, we would miss out on understanding God's justice, his patience, and his ultimate victory. Satan serves as a contrast, revealing God's power and control. He is not operating outside of God's will. He's being used to accomplish it. Even his most destructive schemes will ultimately serve to showcase God's unstoppable plan and his triumph over evil. God's wisdom is far beyond our understanding. What may seem confusing or even frustrating to us, like why Satan and the fallen angels still exist, is actually a part of his magnificent, sovereign plan. His ways are higher than our ways, and his wisdom is beyond our ability to fully grasp. Romans chapter 11, verse 33 says, "Oh, the depth of the riches of the wisdom and knowledge of God! How unsearchable his judgments and his paths beyond tracing out." God is not slow or forgetful. He is working everything out for his ultimate purpose, revealing his glory and justice in ways that will leave us in awe. When we trust in God's wisdom, we can rest in knowing that everything is unfolding exactly as he planned. Even the presence of evil has a place in the grand plan of his divine will, and one day we will witness his final victory. If this video helped you understand more about God's incredible plan, click like and join our Patreon in the description.